And now for an ndtv breaking exclusive. In July last year, Father Stan Swami, the activist priest who was arrested for alleged terror links, died of deteriorating health while in custody, sparking local and global condemnation. The National Investigating Agency, though, which was probing Swami in the Bhima Koregaon case, was adamant of the charges against him. They said it centered around letters between the priest and supposed Maoist leaders. But now a new report by an American forensic firm accessed exclusively by ndtv raises serious questions over those charges, which finds that scores of so-called Maoist documents were planted on the computer of Father Stan Swami by an unknown attacker. Arsenal Consulting is the name of the Boston-based forensic outfit which was hired by Swami's lawyers. Most serious cases of evidence tampering that Arsenal has ever encountered, they say in their report. The report says that Swami's computer had been compromised by a hacker for close to 5 years, during which close to 44 documents were planted in a secret folder on his hard drive. Significantly, the report finds that the attacker made frantic attempts to erase traces of his presence the night before Stan Swami was raided. My colleague Mariam Alavi joins me with more details of this breaking exclusive. Mariam, thanks very much indeed for joining us. This is the latest report, remember, by Arsenal Consulting. They've done reports in 2 other cases of those accused in the Bhima Koregaon case, in Rona Wilson case and Surendra Gadling's case, where they found a similar pattern of hacking, surveillance and planting. But in this one, Mariam, I think what's significant is the number of documents that they claim to have found was planted on this device.
Yeah, so as you mentioned, this report by Arsenal Consulting shows that Father Stan Swami's computer was compromised for almost 5 years and a large number of documents were delivered on his system. What we're going to be seeing on screen now is a list of those documents. It's a long list of document after document. We have said there were 44 files planted on Father Stan Swami's system. This is much higher than what was planted and what was found to be planted on the systems of other accused in the Bhima Koregaon case. We were told about 30 documents were planted on Rona Wilson's computer, about 14 incriminating letters were planted on Surendra Gadling's computer. This is much more than that. 44 documents planted on Father Stan Swami's computer. These included those incriminating Maoist-linked documents that have become central to the NIA's case. But what is more interesting here, Vasu, is that this report also goes on to say that they found no evidence to suggest that Father Stan Swami ever interacted with or even ever opened these files. This bolsters Father Stan Swami's claims, repeated claims, that he had nothing to do with those Maoist-linked documents that were found on his system.
Right, and also interestingly, the report and also from Arsenal, we've got examples of the kind of letters that were planted on, or supposedly planted according to Arsenal, on this device. Because remember, some of these letters were part of the charge sheet by the NIA against Stan Swami. But these, as Arsenal says, were planted.
Yes, so we've been given access to 2 such documents that were planted on Father Stan Swami's system. The first is this letter sent by an SS presumed to be Father Stan Swami to a Vijayan Dada in October 2017. This letter talks about Father Stan Swami's work with the tribals in Jharkhand and also mentions an anti-conversion law that has come up in the state, and goes on to say, on the ground level, there must be some action from your side to capture senior leaders of ruling BJP in the state and demand that the oppressive laws be done with. Now, this letter is part of the police's, the investigative agency's charge sheet against Father Stan Swami. But Arsenal Consulting has found that this was planted. The second such document that was found, that was shared with us, is this table, which is supposed to show the strength of the People's Liberation Guerrilla Army in different parts of the country. The People's Liberation Guerrilla Army is in fact is supposed to be the armed unit of the banned Maoist party in India. Again, this is part of the investigative agency's case against the priest, but Arsenal says that this was planted on his computer. Okay, so 2 important letters there which are core to the NIA's case against Stan Swami.
about how he was supposedly corresponding with a Maoist leader or even trying to tabulate the strength of Maoist forces according to this US-based forensic agency. This was planted, but also, Mariam, interesting details in the report about how the hacker tried to clean up his tracks, and that also has been shared. Some of those screenshots we'll put up on the screen as you talk us through that part of the findings.
So this is true. So Father Stan Swami was raided and his computer was seized on June 12, 2019. A day before this, on June 11, 2019, the report says that the hacker appears to have made frantic attempts to clean up any trace of their malicious activity on the computer. What we are seeing on the screen is a list of those activities on June 11th, where he deleted multiple files, etc., that would have tipped off the agencies to his presence on the computer. But what is intriguing here, like you mentioned, is the timing. This was all done a day before the police raided Father Stan Swami and seized his computer.
Right.
So does this mean that the attacker knew that the police is going to take action and seize his computer? That's a very important question.
And you can see the delete all the way, the attempts to delete his or her traces. Mariam Alvi, thanks very much indeed for that. And joining me on this breaking story is Mark Spencer. He's the president of Arsenal Consulting. He joins me from America, from the Boston area. Thanks very much indeed, Mark, for joining us. There's a lot to get into this latest report of yours. Findings are explosive, as always. But just to start off by trying to understand, Mark, if you can tell us a little bit about, because we've had these conversations before on your previous reports, but for those who are just tuning in, tell us a little bit about Arsenal. What is the kind of work you do, and how did it come about that you ended up doing an analysis of Father Stan Swami's device?
So we are a digital forensics company just outside Boston, Massachusetts. Our primary business is digital forensics consulting. That means we work on cases. We identify electronic information. We analyze the information. Then we report on the information. We also develop digital forensics software, and that software is used by people like us in law enforcement, military, and in the consulting sectors. In this particular case, we were contacted by Father Swami's defense team, and we were asked to look into a forensic image that had been obtained from his computer during a seizure.
Okay, so you were hired by Stan Swami's defense team to do this analysis. Now, tell us, Mark, because you've now done a similar analysis of two other defendants accused in the same case of Rona Wilson and Gadling as well, and Surendra Gadling, where again broadly it appears to be the same modus operandi of hacking and of planting devices. But is there anything in the attack on Stan Swami's computer you found which stood out?
There's a few things. The first is just simply the length of the compromise. Over 4.5 years, his computer was compromised. That is longer than any other single device that we've seen in this case. There's also the time span involving the document deliveries by the attacker. That occurs not only across multiple years, but across 2 campaigns, which is something we also have not yet seen in this case. And then there is the insight we have into the attacker's cleanup activity and their anti-forensic activity the night before the seizure of the computer. I would say the insight we have into that activity is incredible, really. I mean, down to the actual commands that the attacker was running against Swami's computer.
Okay, those are all 3 very interesting things you said. I want to unpack each of them separately, starting with what you said about the fact that what stood out for you was the length of the quote-unquote attack, that this was almost over a period of 5 years. Even the document delivery, which is in a sense the planting of documents on the device, was over a much longer period of time. Just to understand, Mark, especially for the ordinary viewer, how would it be possible that somebody like a Father Stan Swami would be subjected to, or his computer would be subjected to such a prolonged period of invasive activity, of surveillance, of document planting, and yet he wouldn't have a clue?
The software that was used in this case, and especially against Father Swami in particular, is designed to evade detection. And the attacker's methodologies are designed to evade detection.
Right.
So that is by design. The length of time in some ways is related to the relentlessness of the attacker. We can see across multiple computers, if the attacker loses access to a computer for some reason, it might be because a new antivirus software has been installed. We see that soon thereafter, the attacker will compromise the target or the victim again. The attacker does not give up to maintain their presence on the devices.
Okay. But I think, so you're saying that it would have been hard for whoever was being attacked to be aware of it, but the critical part that you've found is this business of document delivery, that I think over 40 documents, according to you, were delivered or in a sense planted on Father Stan Swami's device. Now, these are, it's critical part of the prosecution's case against Father Stan Swami and the others, that they, that there was this letters that were sort of terrorist linked. So your finding is that these were all completely planted, that he never had anything to do with creating them or interacting with them at all?
There's no question. Our report is extremely detailed, and it's very clear. So not only do we include a narrative explanation of what happened in terms of those documents and in terms of many other things, but in terms of those documents that were delivered by the attacker to the hidden, we call it the My Data folder, we have included multiple perspectives from the electronic data to confirm that that is, what happened. Those were delivered surreptitiously. And we have included also actual commands and communications with the attackers, but it's called the command and control server, in the report, so people can actually see screenshots of the raw data. So there is really, there's no question about what happened with these documents, how they got onto his computer. And all of our findings, as with any of our reports, can be confirmed by competent digital forensics practitioners with access to the same electronic evidence. In a way, the most important thing to know about every one of our reports. All of their findings can be confirmed by anyone competent with the same electronic evidence.
Right. That's the part I wanted to come to in just a second, about, because again, given the kind of context, this is a very, as you know, a sensitive case, a politically sensitive case in India. So there will always be these questions about these reports of yours saying, is there some kind of motivation here? Is this coming from some kind of agenda? You're saying all this information can be checked quite easily by any, like for example, our own investigating agencies could check it out. Number one. Number two, because now you've already published several of these reports, have any of them ever approached you, our agencies?
They have not. But the way you paraphrase the situation is correct. Anyone can confirm our findings with access to the same electronic evidence. Our reports, in a sense, are a roadmap for other digital forensics practitioners. We've done the difficult work, so they can follow our reports and they can confirm the findings.
But nobody from our, just to reconfirm this, because no one from our investigating agencies has reached out to you over your previous reports?
To me, no.
Not at all. Okay. I want to come back to that point you made about the erasing of the evidence, because you've not identified the attacker. Is that correct? Because even in previous reports, you've not identified the attacker.
That's correct.
Okay, and again, just to understand for the benefit of our viewers, that's because the attacker's identity is not clear through the available evidence, or you've just decided to withhold it because, you know, for whatever reason you may feel there's not enough information, or for any other reason?
We don't think it's appropriate for us to speculate about the identity of the attacker. We feel very strongly that the Indian government has the resources and the authority to do this. And it's more appropriate for the Indian government to identify the attacker.
But, you know, given the sort of nature of the software used or whatever the hacking technology used, is it possible for a government to identify the attacker?
Yes.
Okay. Short answer, yes. You're saying it is possible, but you're saying no one has approached you, and from our side, we've of course not heard anything from the Indian government about whether they're even getting into this. But I want to come back to that while you don't identify the attacker, it's interesting that you point out that in your findings, the attacker was almost frantically trying to clean up traces of their presence on the device. This was just the day before he was raided, almost as if there was a premonition that, you know, something was going to happen.
Right. I won't speculate as to why the attacker was involved in this activity, but what I can tell you is exactly what was occurring, what they were doing.
Okay.
And I know that the next day the computer was seized.
Right. And what they were doing, as you pointed out, was just basically, like, to put it in simple terms, just deleting their presence there?
They were deleting evidence of the malicious activity over time, but also creating noise by moving innocuous or benign files, thousands of files, in between folders which had previously been used in a malicious way. So
right.
Not just deleting, but also creating this effect of noise.
Okay. Lastly, Mark, you've said this in all your previous reports as well, and just again for the benefit of you, you're saying that this is the most invasive kind of surveillance you've come across.
That's correct, and we have never heard of a case involving the targeting of individuals, the compromise of individuals over the course of this many years, and ultimately culminating in the delivery of documents to multiple targets' computers. Again, over the course of years. It's just not something we've ever heard of, never mind been involved in ourselves.
Okay, interesting. Thanks very much indeed, Mark Spencer, for talking to us on ndtv. Thanks very much indeed.
You're welcome.
Let's just go across now to our panel. We have Vrinda Grover with us, Senior Advocate, Supreme Court, and also Aashutoshsrivastava, Advocate in the Supreme Court, is with us. Vrinda Grover, just starting with you, because now we've seen this in the past. This is the third such report by Arsenal Consulting, and the findings, if true, are quite damning, that documents were actually planted on the computer of an accused. Now, what exactly ought to be happening in this case? Because so far it seems, despite all these reports coming out in the past, the investigating agencies, the courts, really haven't reacted to this.
Absolutely. As you said, this is not the first time, but now what we are noticing is that there is a pattern which is alarming and disturbing, and it goes to the heart of this case. It is whether it was with Stan Swamy or with many of the other people who have been incarcerated for long now in the Bhima Koregaon so-called conspiracy, there is no evidence against them. The only material, and it will not withstand legal judicial scrutiny to be called evidence, the only material that the NIA has placed before the court are the so-called letters. This is the third report which through forensic digital is saying these letters are planted and that there is some agency at work which is planting these so as to create prejudice, and all manner of material is written. In fact, in Stan Swamy's case, let us recall, just before his arrest, he actually puts a video out saying NIA has said all this they have found in my computer, because he was arrested his computer was seized way before he was arrested. And he immediately, without batting an eyelid, denies, says, this material cannot be on my computer because I'm not in communication with any such people. I think what is very interesting is, why is NIA not curious? Why is the NIA not examining this issue? Surely the NIA is interested in ensuring issues of security and of the country are not being abused through someone who is by design planting this.
Right.
Why is the court not asking this question?
Okay.
If this material is actually responsible for people now being in jail since 2018, and therefore that is the only material against them. I also want us to remember, whether it is Stan Swami or others, what is the work Father Stan Swami was doing?
Yes.
He was organizing the tribals. He was organizing Adivasis for their constitutional rights, and he was helping them raise their fundamental rights before the state and others. Whose interest is being served by silencing these voices?
All right.
Who are these forces in the country?
Let me
want to plant this material? These questions must not only be asked in the court but everywhere.
Okay.
But the court must immediately ask the agency, the NIA and others.
All right, let's get Aashutoshsrivastava. Aashutoshsrivastava, while again the report doesn't mention who the identity of the attacker is, they say they don't want to speculate. That, they say, is the role of the Indian government, right? The kind of take on this by the activists and that community that's targeted, they say this is very much like as if it is the state itself which is planting this evidence. The fact remains that that can be at the level of, you know, he said, she said. But the fact remains that, as Vrinda Grover was saying, why is the investigating agency, now you have 3 reports from a fairly well-reputed forensic firm based in the US, so in a sense it's outside of the, you know, the Indian matrix of opinion or bias or prejudice. Why is it that the investigating agency has not chosen to get into this at all? Does this raise serious questions about the intent behind these attacks? Number one. Number two, what does this mean then for the case if it actually turns out that these were all planted documents?
Yes, it is a very, very serious issue. In fact, you know, whenever there is some serious investigation by either by the police agency or by NIA, as in this case, you know, the accused are being arrested and they are taken behind the custody so that they should not go and tamper with the evidences. Now the question arises, when they were behind the bar, it's still the tampering of the evidences are happening, then it raises serious concern on the investigating agency, and that has to be taken seriously by the courts also. And I think you know, it is a clear attack on the fundamental rights given by the Constitution of India to the citizens of this country. That means any innocent person against whom any such kind of you know, technical or maybe some information or some documentary evidence in their computers or in their phones are available.
Okay, you're saying this is an attack on fundamental rights. Vrinda Grover, just last question, because we do know that in the case of Rona Wilson, his lawyers had gone to court with the report against him. Apparently that matter is still pending. There's been no hearing, but one would assume that this is now a matter of some urgency, that because you now got 3 reports, and the one about the latest target is someone who tragically died while in custody.
Absolutely. I think it is a matter of urgency for everyone, not just for the people who are behind bars, whose right to liberty has been totally taken away from them, but also for the court, that what kind of material is being placed before the court if this is material that has been planted, and on the basis of it, a completely false and bogus case has been trumped up and placed before the court. And thirdly, for the NIA to examine that what is this so-called forensics is only going to say, this is what I have found in the computer. But if there is a need for a further probe into how did this material come in, if I have never interacted with that material on my computer, if the digital footprint, the forensic footprint shows that it has been planted, this is and all deliberately, intentionally and by design, then is the NIA not interested in finding out who is behind this? And lastly, is it not of concern to every citizen of the country, each and every one of us, is therefore a sitting duck in whose computer something can be planted.
Right.
If there is somebody in the power firmament who does not like what you are doing, and you can be picked up without any knowledge of what is in your device.
Okay, so serious.
This is dangerous material on the basis of which courts should not take away liberty.
Right. This is so serious questions that are arising from this latest report. We're out of time. Thank you so much for joining us. We'll of course continue to track the story on NDTV. Thank you for watching. Good night.